I got tagged in this video, and when I saw that the title is The Wild Truth About the Bible, I just knew I had to do a live reaction. So let's watch it together.
It has become clear to me that most Christians have no idea how the Bible was put together. It's like they just think it dropped out of the sky one day, already leather bound, with Jesus' words in red. But the reality is...
Let's go ahead and stop right there so I can interject something. I absolutely agree with that. There are a lot of Christians today that have no idea how they got their Bible. And when these Christians come across skeptics, they don't know how to answer the questions that are probably going to get posed in this video. This is why I'm constantly encouraging you guys to actually study. So let's see what she's about to say. Let's continue.
The reality is that it is a messy collection of letters, stories, non-eyewitness accounts, poems, and historical documents, legal documents.
Pause. So there's your first error. She is saying that the Bible is a bunch of messy collection of letters and not eyewitness accounts. Now, I'm gonna let her finish, but how much do you want to bet that she does not substantiate her claim? And what I mean by that is her source is gonna be, trust me. And this is one of the red flags that I run across when people tell me that the Bible's been altered or it's not eyewitness accounts. They have no sources whatsoever. And I'm also willing to bet that she's going to demonstrate an inconsistent stance when it comes to approaching any type of historical literature. Because if you're saying that the Bible is a collection of messy letters and not firsthand witnesses, that means you're dismissing all the evidence that we have that it is firsthand witnesses. In order for her to say that the Bible is not what we claim it is, she must have a standard by which she is testing that by. And my challenge is, does she hold that same standard with all historical documents? Because if she does, then she would find out there is more evidence to support the reliability of the scriptures than there is for any other piece of antiquity. I'm sure that her and many other people believe that Julius Caesar is a real person, and that people like Alexander the Great, Socrates, and Plato existed. But yet, if we were to hold them all to the same consistent measure that we study history, there is more evidence for the reliability of the eyewitness testimonies of Jesus than there is for Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Now, there are many different ways that we should approach historical literature. One of those is, what does it actually say about itself? And how does it present itself? If we find historical literature that talks about a land far off and a time that no one knows, and it is presented as mythology, then you can probably assume that it is mythology. However, the writings in the scriptures do not present themselves that way, but rather they present themselves as eyewitness accounts, and they are written in historical narrative. For example, the Gospel of Luke literally opens up saying, "Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught." And so the very introduction of the Gospel of Luke demonstrates that the author writing this is not only saying that these are eyewitness accounts that he has compiled together through interviews and questioning, but it is also being addressed to an actual historical figure. Now you might say, well, that guy Luke is making it up. He didn't actually see the eyewitnesses. He didn't actually get this information from eyewitnesses. A famous historian named William Ramsay also said the same thing. In an attempt to prove Luke was false, he followed in the exact footsteps of Luke's writings. And upon completion of his investigation, William Ramsay not only recanted what he said about Luke, but he named him a historian of first rank. Because the things that Luke wrote about when writing this gospel and writing the Acts of the Apostles could only have been written by somebody who was present at this time. It's not as easy as it sounds to make up something that's historical narrative of a time that you've never lived in or a place that you've never been. And so there are many things that will take place in the scriptures that show you whoever is writing this, whoever is telling you this information, must have been present at this time and known these things. Not to mention the countless writings that come after the Bible that confirm the Bible based on early church writings way before any councils. On top of that, not to mention all the countless writings that come from non-Christian sources, like early Jewish historians like Josephus, or early writings of the Roman Empire who were attempting to literally destroy Christianity. If Christianity was easily disproven because these writings are made up, how did the Roman Empire struggle so much at proving it false? If these are not eyewitness testimonies, then the Roman Empire can literally prove that false because they're alive at the time of the people saying these things. But I digress. Let's actually see what she's going to say.
Historical documents, legal documents, and they were debated, argued over, cherry-picked by church councils centuries after Jesus lived.
Pause. That's a false statement. And so it sounds like she's implying that the Bible was decided upon centuries after Jesus existed. Now, have people debated over which books of the Bible should be in the Bible? Absolutely. However, when it comes to the core scriptures, the scriptures that all Christians hold to, there's no debate. Every single group of Christianity holds to the 27 books of the New Testament. The actual argument that comes into play between the Catholic, the Orthodox, and the Protestant are a couple fringe books from the Old Testament, and those books are known as the Apocrypha. But when it comes to the New Testament, the writings of Jesus' life and ministry and the apostles that came from him, nobody's disagreeing about that. And these books did not need a council to approve it. I have a handful of early church writings right here that come into play well before any council takes place. In all of these writings, they are quoting the words of the apostles and quoting from the Gospels. Polycarp was a disciple of the apostle John. Ignatius was also a disciple of John. The Didache comes before any councils. The writings of Clement of Rome come from before any councils. And if you read the letters from Clement of Rome, he is literally referencing all the New Testament scriptures. He quotes from James. He quotes from the letter to the Romans. He quotes from the Gospels. And so what she is saying is absolutely untrue historically. But let's continue.
After Jesus lived. And Jesus wasn't even his name, but somehow it's the name above all names.
Pause. What do you mean Jesus was not even his name? Based on what? Here's what I always find funny. These people that swear to know more about the Bible than the people who study the Bible, the people who also reject the Bible while using the Bible to prove their point, will say things like this. Jesus wasn't his name. What was his name then? What was his name? Let me guess. You're going to say his name was Yeshua. Well, here's a fun fact. There are no early writings that address him as Yeshua, because the earliest writings about the life of Jesus were written in the modern tongue at the time, which was Greek. Specifically Koine Greek. The reason we know his name is Yeshua is because we can reverse translate from Greek to Aramaic or to Hebrew. And so the very reason that anyone can claim his name is Yeshua is because of the very fact that we have the Greek manuscripts that date to the first couple centuries that tell us what his name is. Now, before you jump up saying, well, why would it be in Greek? He was a Jew. That would be like saying, why do Mexican people in America write things in English? They're Mexican. Because the common tongue in America is English. Because if you want to reach the most amount of people, you're going to do things in English because that gives you a bigger target audience. Likewise, in the early Roman Empire, to reach the most people, to communicate with the most people, you are going to use the common tongue. There are multiple times in scripture where Jesus or the apostles have conversations with Romans. Jesus stood on the stage and talked with Pontius Pilate. Do we think that Jesus was speaking Aramaic to Pontius Pilate? No, he probably spoke Greek to him because being bilingual is not a 21st century invention. His name was written in Greek as Jesus. Just like if you write my name in Spanish, it will be Miguel. If you write my name in Hebrew, it will be Mikael. But let's continue.
I'll save that for another video. Anyway, entire books were left out.
Pause. Which books were left out? Please tell us which books were left out. Now, what I'm guessing is she's not even talking about the actual books that we do have arguments and disagreements about, like the Apocrypha, because that's Old Testament, and that wouldn't help her in her case right now about Jesus. And so I'm assuming that she's going to bring up some of the Gnostic gospel texts that came out centuries after the apostles that were disproven by everyone and that not a single scholar on this planet would consider a legitimate writing. Let's see where she goes with it.
Stories were altered on purpose. Translations came from other translations.
Pause. Stories were altered on purpose. What is your source? That's like me saying, guys, the Mona Lisa was altered. Okay, so what did it look like first? What did the original look like? Well, just trust me, it's been altered. Can you substantiate your claim? What was it altered from? Who did the altering? And also, how did they alter so many manuscripts? Because if you know anything about the manuscript history, we have over 5,000 copies of manuscripts and manuscript fragments from the first 5 centuries. Not only that, but on top of that, as I referenced, we have thousands of early church writings that quote from the scriptures. And so in order for someone to alter it and no one know about it, they would have to alter thousands of writings from church fathers and thousands of manuscripts and do so secretly. By the way, prior to the internet, modern transportation, and modern levels of communication. Many times you can defeat these arguments just by saying substantiate your claim. I'd also like to add, she said translations from translations. This is another thing that you hear people say that is actually not true. Every time a new Bible gets printed, it's not translating from a translation. I'd be willing to bet that her and many others who say this have no idea how the Bible was translated. For example, the early church did not have a Bible like we have today. We have a Bible like this. It has a spine and it's all compiled together. But this is not one document and it's not one book. It's a compilation. In the early church, they had these things separate, different letters that were being copied and shared. And the first Bible like this, where it's all compiled together for Christians to use, is really the Latin Vulgate. The Latin Vulgate is a Latin translation of the Greek, and it was done by someone named Jerome. And so for 1,000 years, the Latin Vulgate was the standard Bible, and it was a translation from the Greek and the Hebrew, and it was in Latin, which was the common tongue at that time. The next common Bibles to come were the English Bibles. So we went from Latin to English. So did the English Bible translators just translate from the Latin into English? No! The English Bibles are also translated from the Greek and the Hebrew. Greek for the New Testament, Hebrew for the Old Testament. There are no Bibles that are translations from translations. Again, substantiate your claim. Show me one Bible that is a translation of a translation. I'll wait. Until then, though, let's continue.
Losing more and more of the meaning from the original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek.
No.
Then comes King James. Yeah, the guy most modern Christians will swear by. He actually commissioned his version not for purity, not for accuracy. He did it to consolidate his own power. He did it to control the masses and justify his monarchy. And
So I see this often where people try to say, King James tried to use the Bible for power. And let me tell you some more about King James and how evil he is. And let me tell you this about King James. King James did not translate the Bible. The King James translation might have been commissioned by him, but the translators were faithful Christian men. So if you're going to talk about the King James Bible, you have to speak about the translators, whose goal was to stay as honest and true to the text as possible. They utilized what's known as the Textus Receptus, which was a collection of Greek manuscripts, to make the King James Bible. And so whatever you're about to say about King James was going to use the Bible for power, substantiate your claim and how that affects the translation, because he's not the one translating it. So you really have to talk about the translators, who were devout Christian faithful men. Let's see where she's going with this.
He did it to control the masses and justify his monarchy. And the truth is, he was a violent, manipulative ruler who knew exactly how to use religion as a weapon. And it's just crazy to me that people are still using it as a weapon today. But
Pause. What? See, what? This is like a sleight of hand. Here's all these things I'm saying, and I have no sources. I have no evidence. I cannot substantiate the claims that I'm making. And by the way, King James is evil, and he wanted to use the Bible to control man. What? Even if that's absolutely true, it doesn't make the Bible false. It just means someone used it incorrectly for his own means. That does not mean the Bible's not trustworthy. And if you cannot show me where the changes happened or what was altered or what the original said, you're just throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks. Let's continue.
Ask most Christians about this and they'll look at you like you're speaking another language. because
Yes, we will look at you like you're speaking another language. Because you are not making any sense, you have no evidence, and you're literally just saying anything and hoping that people believe you just because you said it. We look at you like you're speaking another language, and that other language is called lies. Continue.
Because they've been taught, they've been programmed to never question the book, even though the book itself has been questioned, edited, and weaponized for 2,000 years.
Pause. Prove it! This is a 2-minute and 15-second video. You could have put 10 seconds of a source. You could have just put it right there on the bottom of the screen. Instead of putting the wild truth about the Bible, put a source on screen. Continue.
1,000 years. And anytime you do question it, you get this circular logic that the Bible is true because the Bible says it's true.
Pause. And so I actually agree, though. This is what I said in the very beginning of the video. Christians should not say it's true because it says it's true. To those Christians, I would ask them, what happens if someone would have handed you a different book? However, Anyone who's taken the time to study their faith and understands why we trust the Bible would never give you such an answer. The answer that should be given is because it has demonstrated itself to be reliable against the highest level of scrutiny possible. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Bible literally stood the test of time against the Roman Empire trying to squash Christianity out. Just in case you don't understand the gravity of what that means, imagine I started writing about things happening right now, and then the US government wanted to prove me false. They could do so by questioning everybody that I write about and pointing out every flaw that I'm writing about because it is the present time. And yet the Roman Empire, who did not like Christianity, they slaughtered Christians. They lit us on fire along the streets, and it was called Roman candles. You're telling me that these guys, who had the most power possible, couldn't prove it false? But yet you, 2,000 years later, with no evidence, are saying, yeah, but it's false. It has proven itself reliable, period. And rather than making this video an hour long, I would challenge you all to check out actual scholars. Even non-Christian scholars do not deny the fact that it is reliable. They just deny the message. Let's continue.
When somebody says the Bible is true because the Bible says it's true, it's like plugging a power strip into itself and expecting electricity. Circular logic is not proof.
Pause.
It's just blind.
I agree. Circular logic is not true, but either is unsubstantiated claims that you cannot prove whatsoever. You are just speaking out of your butt. Just repeating things that I've been told, because clearly you haven't done any research, because if you've done research, you would probably be referencing the research. You haven't done that. What, you watch a movie like Da Vinci Code or something? Came across a YouTube channel and someone said the Bible's not true and you're like, yes. Continue.
It's just blind faith talking to itself. But if people actually did the research, if they knew what was left out and why, and if they understood how much of modern Christianity is built on mistranslations and political agendas, the awakening would be a rude one, but at least they'd be awake.
If people would do the research, I wish you would take your own advice. Listen to me. Anybody watching this, don't believe anything I said either. Go do your research. Talk about irony right there. How about you do the research? I can absolutely tell you that this person has done zero research, and I can tell you that because nothing she said is supported by any historical scholars whatsoever. And so here's your choice. Believe this person who tells you to do research but clearly doesn't do research, or go dive into it and find out for yourself. I challenge anyone who has any integrity to go ahead and actually challenge the Bible. When men who actually challenge the Bible with integrity do so, they walk away as Christians. God bless and go in peace.